You're probably going to think I'm crazy, but I swear on my life, I've never been more certain of anything. What happened to me that night wasn't a nightmare. It was real. And whatever was in that house, whatever followed me, it's still out there, waiting. I inherited my aunt's house after she passed. She'd lived there alone for decades, and truthfully, I never thought much about it. It was just a property, something I was supposed to look after. The house was massive, old, and creaked with every gust of wind. It had that musty, decaying smell, like it was holding on to memories, unwilling to let go. It sat deep in the woods, miles from any town. I've never been a superstitious person, but even I couldn't shake the feeling that the place was off. There was something about it, like the walls had absorbed everything that had ever happened inside them. And I'm not talking about the usual things, like dust or mildew. No, this was different. This felt like history, but not the kind you want to remember. The first night I spent there, I was exhausted. The house was silent, too silent, like it was holding its breath. I sat up in the master bedroom. The bed was old, the mattress sagging in the middle, and the room felt heavy with time. The air was thick, almost humid, despite the chill outside. I tried to ignore it. There was no reason to be scared. But as I lay in bed, the silence was deafening. It was so quiet, I swear I could hear my own heartbeat. And then, as if it were a whisper to break the stillness, I heard something. A faint sound, like the banging of metal on wood. Thud, thud, thud. I told myself it was nothing. Old houses creak, and the wind could make anything sound like footsteps. But the sound grew more distinct, more rhythmic. It was coming from downstairs. I lay there, listening, my pulse quickening. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a door was swinging in the breeze, or a rodent was scratching at the floorboards. But that thud, that dragging sound, it wasn't normal. It was too deliberate, too heavy, and it was too close. I knew I should ignore it. I knew I should stay in bed and let it be, but I couldn't. The house had a way of pulling you in, of making you think that something was always just around the corner. So, against my better judgment, I got up. The hallway stretched before me like a shadowed abyss. Every step I took felt like an intrusion, like I was disturbing something that didn't want to be disturbed. I grabbed a flashlight and made my way down the stairs, each step creaking under my weight. The thudding was louder now, and I could feel it vibrating through the floor, almost like it was coming from the walls. I reached the bottom of the stairs and turned into the kitchen. It was empty. Nothing. The silence almost mocked me, so I stood there for a moment, trying to convince myself it was nothing. But then it happened again. Thud, thud, thud. Closer now, coming from the hallway. And this time, I saw it. Not at first, but I felt it. There was a shift in the air, a pressure that made my skin crawl. The hair on my neck stood up as the darkness in the hallway seemed to move, as if the shadows were breathing. Something wasn't right. I slowly turned the corner, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the darkness. And then I saw it. It was a figure, but not like a normal person. Its shape was wrong. It was too tall, unnaturally tall, and the proportions were all off. Its limbs were too thin, stretched too long, and it moved wrong. The sound of dragging, scraping grew louder, and I saw what it was dragging. Something heavy, something wet. Its fingers, long, unnaturally thin, scraped the floor as it pulled something toward it. My stomach churned. I couldn't make sense of it. The thing's skin was pallid, stretched too tight, and its face, it didn't have one. Not really. Just a smooth, featureless mask that shimmered with the faintest trace of light. But its eyes, God, its eyes were black, hollow, empty. The kind of eyes you see in nightmares, staring at you like they could swallow you whole. It stopped, stood there, watching me. I could feel it, this terrible, oppressive pressure building around me, as if the house itself was closing in. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. It was like time itself was slowing down. My flashlight flickered. I couldn't make it stop shaking. My legs felt like lead, but I knew I couldn't stay there. I couldn't let it see me any longer. Then, it shifted. Its head jerked toward me. A jagged, distorted grin spread across its face, stretching far too wide for something human. And then, from its mouth, came a whisper, low and cold, like ice cutting through the warmth of summer. "Get out! Now!" I didn't need to be told twice. I turned, running blindly through the house, my feet pounding the floors, crashing into walls, doing anything I could to get away. The entire house felt alive. Every door, every window, every creak in the wood. It was all wrong. The walls felt like they were closing in on me. I stumbled through the kitchen, toward the front door, and the sound of dragging grew closer, sharper, closer. I reached for the door, my fingers trembling so violently I couldn't unlock it fast enough. It was like the house was holding me there, trapping me. The thudding was now behind me. Too close, far too close. I could feel the presence, feel it on my back, just inches away. Finally, the door opened, and I didn't think. I bolted into the night, not stopping until I was in the middle of the road, panting, shaking, covered in sweat, my heart threatening to burst from my chest. I looked back at the house, but the windows were dark, empty. The thing, it, was still there. I could feel it, like its gaze was still on me, even though I was far away. But I didn't go back. Not then, not ever. I left everything behind. The house, the furniture, the memories. It didn't matter. I could still hear that dragging sound in my mind, the low, rasping whispers that seemed to echo through the trees. I couldn't shake it. And sometimes, on cold, dark nights, when the wind howls just right, I hear it again. That thud, 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 coming from somewhere deep in the woods, like the house is still calling to me. But this time, I don't go back. Not ever.